Hi, Black Hollywood Live fans. Today we are talking Ryan Lochte and the end of federal private prisons on Justice is Served.
You are tuned into Black Hollywood Lives. Justice is served.
Hello, Justice fans. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Justice is Served. My name is Chelsea Galicia, and I am joined by two co-hosts, fellow attorneys Shaka Smith and Yemi Abayomi. Welcome back, Yemi, from your world travels. We're so happy that you are back. We've got a very interesting array of cases and topics that range from, like I introduced, Ryan Lochte to private prisons and a whole bunch of stuff in between. Let's get started by talking about Ryan Lochte, who a lot of people have nicknames for. I'm going to try and keep it professional and respectful around here. He's certainly been tried and convicted of douchery in the court of public opinion. But let's talk about the legal side. First, about whether, I guess I should just start the whole story by introducing, just in case you haven't heard, although I don't know if anybody in the world has not heard this story yet, about Ryan Lochte going on NBC and saying that he was in a cab with three of his teammates and the cab got pulled over by cops or people impersonating cops who then held him up at gunpoint and stole their money. That was the story that he told on NBC. The police investigated in Rio, and things kind of quickly fell apart, especially with the release of a surveillance camera footage from a gas station that showed there was a fight there, which made it very clear that at least the part about being in a moving cab and being pulled over by police, I'm using air quotes, was an outright lie. Yeah. The true part was that there was a gun involved and a request for money. The request for money was presumably because of the damage that the four had done to the back of the gas station. I guess they were looking for a bathroom, couldn't get in one, damaged a sign, peed outside, and the security for the gas station was not very pleased with the damage and so demanded payment. Did I get that all right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Okay, great. So there are, let's see, how should we start this? First of all, he comes out and he says, actually, sorry, I wasn't exactly careful, or what were the words? Candid, that was it. With my use of words, very well-crafted statement, but he sticks to the I was robbed at gunpoint and the victim of false imprisonment. I actually, as much as I do not want to defend him, think that in some respects, he's right, although I'm not a lawyer in Brazil, and assuming their laws defining robbery are the same as ours, technically, he was robbed.
At gunpoint.
And
I think you could look at it either way. Yes, was he asked to give money? But I think it was more of a negotiation. You did something, you were kind of in trouble, and you engaged in a negotiation, in a deal, and said, you know what, like, let's keep this quiet. And people do this all the time when you're like in a car accident. Don't involve the insurance companies.
But
Let me just like
do
cut you a
you lose
check.
a critical element of negotiation when there's a gun involved? I think you do.
I think that's right. I think that's right. But apparently there was someone there who spoke English. I feel like the way Ryan Lochte presented it, I had no clue what was going on. All I saw was a gun pointed at me.
Yeah, there was
and
a
request for
bystander
money. There was someone
who came and
translating.
Yeah.
So at that point, I mean, I think there could have been some alternatives there. Like, okay, let's call the police.
I think.
Except if you have been to Rio or heard much about it, the police are pretty busy with other more serious crimes, and I have heard many people, including a friend who lived with me just recently and is from Brazil. She's from Sao Paulo, but her parents were the victim of a home invasion robbery, and the police don't really respond all that quickly, even to something that's that serious. So I would imagine that the security at this gas station is not going to think that the police are going to come running over this destruction of property that here in the United States, most police departments would take a look at seriously and would come, pretty quickly. But over there, it's not the same.
But the police did end up going to the scene.
They did not.
I don't think they did, because I think after they paid the money.
No, I think they arrived after they left.
Well, Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think they had called the police. The police arrived after they left. But to me, there was a gun drawn, and when there's a gun drawn, it's just hard to see the negotiation factor. So I can see why or how the story was over-exaggerated. He did come out later and say that he was drunk giving that interview. I don't defend Lochte.
He was drunk giving the interview.
Yeah.
He was still hungover from the night that he destroyed the gas station door.
Exactly. So I don't defend him. I don't defend him in any way whatsoever. But the fact that a gun was drawn and money was exchanged, I can certainly see how he may
If a
have...
gun hadn't been drawn, they would have just, gone off and been like, I hate to say it, entitled Americans that, do something silly and then just...
Oh, so if someone owes you money and you would prefer they don't go off, you think it's all right to pull a gun and ask for the money they actually owe you?
But then the thing is, imagine someone comes onto your property and, that whatever, they're stealing stuff, they're damaging your property, and you're, let's say you're a homeowner with your gun, like you sit still until, the cops come or until we, resolve the situation. Maybe they have the right to, the security guards who are protecting the property, maybe they have a right to pull a gun on him.
We have to remember that the
place.
laws over there are not the same as the laws here. And this is why Americans have such a bad reputation when they travel abroad, is because they go over there thinking they first sort of own the world, and that the rules of what they live by apply everywhere around the world, and that's just not true.
Well, I'd hate to generalize Americans with that sort of attitude.
I'm saying the general reputation of Americans traveling abroad is not of people who are courteous and respectful. I've heard American commentators say, "Oh, what these kids were doing was what we all do. What's the big deal, being drunk and causing property damage?" I don't... What's the big deal? I mean, I guess, okay, you're not killing somebody, but this is not how you should represent yourselves here
the big deal.
Or abroad.
Oh,
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. This was an awful representation of America. It hurts us very badly, but again, do I think it's necessarily justified to have a gun pulled on you and then money demanded? And whether or not you classify that as a robbery, is it too far afield? I don't think so. So obviously he added details in there that made it far more inflammatory, and I think that was incorrect. And
what was crazy was that, like, even some of these details, he talked about how the rest of the team got down on the floor, but I stood up to the guys and said, no,
actually, the video
I'm not going down.
The video kind of shows that. The video shows the guys sitting down on the sidewalk or something, and him standing up, and the other guys are like pulling at his shirt, like, sit the heck down.
Yeah.
The other bit about this is there a crime that he committed, Ryan Lochte, in telling this tall tale to the media? As far as I can see, there is not a crime in making something up to the media. Had he reported it to the police the same way, then there would be a charge of giving a false report to the police. So it depends if that's the same story he told police when they questioned him, and that we don't know. And let's just say that he is charged with some kind of crime. The likelihood that he's going to get extradited to Brazil, I think, is pretty low. We have a deal with Brazil where we do extradite people who are facing serious
certain
charges.
offenses, yeah.
It's more like on the order of murder and rape and things like that, but making a false statement isn't one of them. So based on the treaty we have, very unlikely we'd ship them out over there.
And that's what made this case go a little bit more curious with the swimmer Jimmy Fegan, who they did catch before he was able to leave Brazil.
Yeah, right at the airport.
Exactly, and then we hear about this $11,000 fine, but now Jimmy Fegan has come out and said that they tried to extort him, and that initially it was somewhere in the order of $30,000 that they asked for, and when he turned that option down, they raised it to $46,000, and they gave him the option of staying in Brazil while the investigation concluded, which would have lasted a little bit over a month.
Well, but that's fair, because Brazil probably knows that they wouldn't be able to get him back if they let him go.
But certainly the what seems like to me to be an arbitrary fine, and that once he turned down, they raised this arbitrary fine. And it turned out that the deal his lawyers were able to cut were that he had to pay this around $11,000 within 3 days, or the fine was going to be raised to $46,000 until he could leave.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the way that we would do it here. But, again, this is a different country. And if that's the way that they do things, we have to respect that. I mean, it's not like they shot him on sight for damaging something or something really obscene, like, I think I heard recently that 2 Dutch guys were executed in some country for having 5 pills of ecstasy on them. That's like a hugely disproportionate punishment.
I just
but
wonder if-
this one of charging them a lot of money if they didn't want to stay, because if they left, they were gone. So you got to overcharge them, I guess, to make sure that they're.
It
And
just
I think
seems
it's
like that's
also
not
just-
a policy of government.
Well, I think it's just a lesson that if you're gonna commit a crime in a foreign country, or even engage in vandalism or things that can potentially get you into custody in a foreign country, be prepared to deal with consequences that aren't consistent with your home country, which might mean that you have to pay some strange, unusual, arbitrary fine that ultimately may or may not go to some charity. Those are the consequences that you
I just think for
you take
think
on.
it's fair.
But I think for a country that's hosting the Olympics, you expect certain international norms to govern, and I
No.
No, I don't think this is under the
No.
purview of the Olympic
Whose-
Committee. This
whose
is the
laws-
criminal justice system
Whose
in
laws should
Brazil.
prevail? Whoever wins the most gold medals, you get the
Well, I know. I think
state who.
I think
whose
police.
laws
I
we
think
follow?
police extortion is something on a different level, and so I think.
So now, are we saying now that these swimmers, just because they're Olympic athletes, should be treated differently from like someone else who was
No,
caught
I don't.
doing this?
I don't think they would have demanded the same fine for someone to leave that they did in this case. I don't think it would have been
Well,
demanded.
I don't know if there's any way to tell.
Well, the fact that he refused it and they raised it arbitrarily, he said no, I won't pick one of the two options, and they said, well, now we're going to charge you $46,000.
But that my point is that might just be how things are done in Brazilian, in the police
Oh,
force
I think
there.
our common sense could govern here. All
All I know is that if I'm going to a foreign country, I'm not even engaging in any types of shenanigans that
No.
could cause me to even
Yeah.
come into police custody in the first place. I don't want it.
I agree. I
I'm going to
100%
avoid
agree.
it.
But if you
and
are,
when that happens, I've got to be prepared to deal with the consequences.
or I think you'd expect certain things to be somewhat synonymous when you come to
Coming
the
from a
Western
foreign
world.
country myself, I don't expect anything. I don't expect anything. Anything can come my way, and I know that.
Yeah,
Maybe
there
that's
you
why I
go.
would act differently.
So the economy has laid out justice for Ryan Lochte by getting him dropped from all of his endorsements. There's 3 major endorsements. I think it was Speedo, Gillette, and I can't remember
There's
the
a
last
Japanese
one.
air mattress company.
And he was making around $2 million a year on these. They have all dropped him. I think it's fair. It's probably within the standard morals clauses that these companies have. We do have a
Those
difference.
are the kind of consequences I want to see for bad behavior, not necessarily guns drawn, but yeah.
Okay, well, I'm glad justice was served your way in this incident. Where we differ here is whether we believe that the endorsements are going to come back soon enough.
Yeah, I think,
Yemi and I vote no.
No, I don't want someone who is not a liar representing my brand in any way, shape, or form, regardless of whether he's a talented athlete, which we all agree he is. I don't want someone who literally is the face of entitlement, of privilege, of dishonesty. That's not. At what point am I going to have that person representing my brand? Why would I ever want that?
Well, I would say Lochte had. Well, we love our talented athletes in this country. We know that. But Lochte's also said before this incident wanted to swim in Tokyo in 4 years. And more than talented athletes, we like athletes that continue to perform well. So I predict if he comes back from suspension, is able to, if that's what's doled out by the swimming association, that he will come back, and if he does well, I think those endorsements will start to pour in. We love a good redemption story in this country.
I
and
think
so,
if he went back to Brazil and faced the legal consequences there, then maybe. But being able to skip out when his teammates all got caught up, and he was the one who was the
ringleader.
yeah.
I think we've all seen athletes that have been absolutely vilified by bad acts they've committed, and more even horrific than Lochte, and they've come back from some of those. So I don't doubt by any measure that he will see those endorsements come back in them, and he's in the pool and doing well.
Don't forget, again, the Olympics is 4 years away, so now we're talking about a 36-year-old swimmer. We don't even know that he's going to have the same kind of momentum that he had going into 2016.
I think
that he'll
time
have
will
in
tell. But
2020.
I think time will tell. I think he'll do
You're
just
optimistic.
fine. I think he'll do just
He
fine.
should
We love our
be on his
athletes.
team.
in
Do
this
you think
country.
this is the last time we're going to talk about these legal problems that Ryan Lochte?
These particular
Scott?
ones probably? Yeah.
This is it. It's just going to die.
I feel like anytime someone sees his face, they're going to think of this. I think this is his legacy, actually, that he's just left. Maybe it's just recent, and that's why, but I think this is a legacy that he's left for himself. This is a pretty big...
There's certain, even with Kobe and certain
Faux
things
pas.
that we've seen in the past with our athletes and huge faux pas, they've managed to come back and do pretty well from them. So I don't doubt.
I'm glad he has a cheerleader in you.
I just know the way things are going to work. I don't doubt he'll come back and do just fine.
All right. Well, speaking of, will we be talking about these legal problems again? We have part 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 in Tyga's legal problems with landlords. Yeah. We have a similar story to one we just covered, not even a month ago?
Yeah, maybe a couple weeks.
Another incident where he owes 6 figures to a landlord that he bailed on. What are the details of this one?
So Tyga rented a home in Malibu, and he now owes this F&S Investment Properties over $180,000 for back pay and rent. Apparently he abandoned the premises and just left them in disarray. He had painted the doors black. He was using this home for his clothing line, and of which had kind of Egyptian themes. And so he had painted Egyptian themes onto these doors. He had spilled ink all over the concrete of the home, had poured ink down the drain, and then just left the property like that. And so now he owes a judgment of $186,000 to the landlord.
So I guess he thought because of the improvement value he added, he didn't have to. It might make sense.
Wow, you're an excellent defense attorney.
No.
So we were wondering, why would any landlord at this point rent to him? And Shaka, you had an interesting take on why somebody might actually come out ahead by doing that.
Well, you always know there's something in the law called being judgment-proof, and I think people know that he's not judgment-proof, and that just means the person has no money. So regardless of guilt or innocence, you're not going to get the money that you're owed. With Tyga, at least you know you're going to get the money. You may have to sue for it, and worst case scenario, maybe you get some publicity for your.
Do you? I mean, is he making a ton of money?
Yeah, he seems to be making quite a bit. He's linked with the Kardashians.
I know none of his music. The only reason I know him is because he's dating a Kardashian. I don't know where he's receiving revenue from that.
And so I think
unless it's her pocketbook.
You kind of know at least financially he's secure. So he ended up
backed by the full faith and credit of the Kardashian clan. Oh man.
He did pay the last judgment. So.
Well,
Finally.
But he's also had, this is not the beginning of his financial woes. He's, had back taxes that he hasn't paid. He has, there's a claim against him by a jeweler that says he never got paid for certain jewelry he provided. Obviously, this is not the first time that a landlord has come to him. So clearly he has financial issues.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
he almost got arrested over it. But,
he paid. So, he found the money.
All right. And rounding out our Hollywood legal news, I guess, does Ryan Lochte count as Hollywood? It kind of feels like
he's a celeb.
Yeah.
He told a story that sounded like it could have come out of an action movie, so I guess it's quasi-Hollywood. So this is a surprising decision by a judge hearing one of the cases against Fox's Empire. Mm-hmm. We talked before on the show about how there are a number of cases, people coming forward and say that Fox ripped off their character or their idea for the show Empire, hugely successful show. Many of these just get tossed without ever going to trial. They never even settle because Fox is able to get them tossed out. Yeah. Not so in this one case.
Yeah. So.
How'd that happen?
Well, so it looks like author Sophia Eggleston of The Hidden Hand wrote this book that she believes her main character strongly resembles Cookie Lion.
Wasn't that herself? It was an autobiography?
Yeah, it's a memoir, yeah. So this is her. She was apparently like a drug kingpin or queenpin, if I may. And she was very flashy, wore expensive clothing, cursed, had kind of an abrasive,
she led a gang.
Edgy personality. Yeah. And so there were all of these, went to jail for drugs, lost her lover while she was in jail. There were certain similarities to Cookie Lion, who has had all of these things happen to her on the show. So she's saying that, you basically took my story and placed it into Empire. And
what I loved about the judge did his homework here, because he said, while there's certain things that are typical in this genre, gangs and shootings, that what's not typical is having this all happen to like the female head of a family. So I guess the judge had kind of scoured the genre and looked at different books and had them research. But so he found that there were some essential elements that were in both that were atypical.
Very interesting. So this case will proceed. And we will also proceed now to get a word from our sponsor. Take it away, Shaka.
Yes, General Assembly. Thank you guys very much. Looking for a career in tech? Who isn't these days, right?
Definitely need a side hustle.
Maybe business data design or marketing. Trying to get that promotion or raise? To excel in your career, you need 21st century training and skills. General Assembly is the largest and most respected school worldwide for people seeking to grow their talent and master the marketplace. Whether it's learning remotely online, always fun, makes it a little bit easier with your schedule, or in person at one of their beautiful campuses, you can join the 350,000 people who have already gotten the training needed to propel careers in tech and business.
Impressive.
Wow. More than 2,500 companies worldwide hire GA's graduates, with 99% of graduates who participate in GA's career services landing a new role and field within 6 months of starting their job search.
Even more impressive.
Wow, almost 100. Take control of your talent and career now. Find out more at ga.co/geek. That's ga.co/geek. Enter the promo code GEEK to save on your first class workshop or event. That's ga.co/geek. Code word, geek.
All right. Thank you so much, General Assembly, for your support of Justice is Served, so we can continue to bring this beautiful show to you free each and every week. Let's move on to some news that had me jumping for joy, which also made me feel a little like we are on the pulse of sort of legal culture in this country.
Yeah.
A couple months ago, was it 2 months ago, we talked about the article in Mother Jones about a reporter that went undercover to a private prison, became a corrections officer, and wrote this lengthy article about his experience and what he saw and lots of things that sort of reminded me of watching Orange is the New Black. But this was real life.
Yeah.
And then just this week, the Department of Justice announces that it will end its use of private prisons when the contracts that they currently have signed with those 3 companies expire. Yeah. Oh my God, on a scale of 1 to amazing, how amazing was this?
This was great. It was a victory just for like human rights, yeah.
So this has been a huge deal. I've been looking at this for a long time. It was a big part of Bernie Sanders' platform, which I've obviously been an enthusiastic supporter of. So this was really good news. And then, okay, so let's just continue the celebratory congratulations part.
Yeah.
It's good news. I was surprised because I thought, and I imagine they still are, that these companies are so powerful that the government would never be able to pull this off.
Well, we know it's because it's good news for a very tiny part
I know.
of the
Okay,
population.
so let's already start with the bad news in light of the
Still good news, just for a few.
So it's
And for now,
when
we
you
don't know what
look
might happen
at
in
the
future.
reality of it,
Yeah.
you're right. This is almost more of a bigger symbolic gesture than it is a real life altering thing for our prison population.
Yeah.
And that's because there's a small percentage of people who are in federal prison. Most of our prisoners are in state-run facilities. These only apply to federal prisons, and only the federal prisons that are overseen by the Bureau of Prisons, not by ICE, not by U.S. Marshals. Those branches still have their contracts in place, and there's nothing about them giving the contracts up when they expire, and nothing about the states. So it doesn't really affect all that many people. Estimates I've heard are about 20,000.
Yeah, 13 prisons.
Yeah, and it's just about 10% of the prison population.
If that. And so
the symbolic gesture.
Yeah, and it is important because states could follow. The feds gave the reason of a report that was done.
Yeah.
That showed sort of what we heard about in the article, that the prisons were not safer. They didn't actually deliver on the promise of saving money. It's still controversial about whether or not private prisons do or do not save money. It's a little bit difficult to compare them apples to apples with the federally run prisons. But as far as the study could tell, it wasn't any of this they didn't deliver on this promise of all these dramatic savings. And the savings looked to be at the expense of quality of food, quality of correctional officers. These places were more dangerous. Fights broke out more often. People died, many of them in these facilities. So there didn't seem to be a great argument for keeping the contracts. Even then, I was still surprised because I understand how powerful these companies can be. Did I miss anything about what the report highlighted?
No, I think that's a lot of what the report was talking about. The savings, and also the fact that there's not it hasn't been demonstrated that private prisons are being more effective with safety and security.
And definitely not with like education or any kind of helping these people restore their ability to be productive members of society.
And so it's good to have a government report that details all of that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think it only slightly impacts the main. Private prison organizations are Correctional Corporation of America and GEO, and unfortunately, this is only going to impact a small percentage of their business operations.
Although their stocks took quite a plummet in the days right after this. I don't know.
And maybe there is a way to run private prisons in a way that's effective, and maybe now that they're seeing a potential financial hit to the sort of way they're doing things, they might try to change. I don't know.
I saw an argument that somebody tried to make in an article that this was a bad thing, that what should have been done is that we should have tried to fix the problems in private prisons as opposed to try to do away with them.
The only thing that would fix it would be the economic incentives, and so...
But there's no way to incentivize economically a company to care about these prisoners as people, because as a corporation, their sole responsibility is to maximize a return for the shareholders. So I don't see a way that they could be fixed.
Well, I think if they realize that they can take less of a profit, but taking that less means the government doesn't cancel their contracts and their stock price doesn't tumble, then all of a sudden that becomes a better route. So if they take that lesson in that way, then it could be a positive thing, but we'll see.
But they would have to have significantly more contracts canceled than has been.
Well, I mean, watching their stock price tumble today, maybe that might be their wake-up call to say, wait a minute, we need to start improving things to a level that the government decides not to back us. We have now an official report saying it's not saving any money, safety and security is down.
Of course, they disagree with the findings.
Yeah.
They deny what they saw in them. So
we'll see if there's any, change or pushback. But it's positive either way. It's good that this is happening.
It is definitely good, unless there's a change in the law about the fact that corporations are only responsible to shareholders. I doubt that there's going to be a systematic change that's deep enough to justify the existence of these places. Because as of right now, I mean, we're literally just allowing companies to profit off of making people in prison even more miserable than they already are. Because as a corporation, you got to cut overhead to maximize profits. Yeah. And there's just, I don't see a good way of fixing that.
Well, the good thing is that with the report and seeing that the federal government has taken this step, maybe states will follow suit, and we'll see kind of more of a snowball effect.
Come on, California, we're looking at you. All right, and now another interesting sort of insight that we got into the Obama administration and its view on the bail system. So right now, sort of to illustrate how the bail system works, if let's say, I don't know, Yemi saw us Shaka and I outside near her car, and she thought we were vandalizing it, she could call the cops and have us, arrested for vandalizing it. And the bail that we would have to pay would be the same. It's no matter if Shaka earns $1 million a year and I earn $10,000 a year. If it was, say, set at the schedule of $5,000 for this crime, that's what it is for both Shaka and I. And the Obama administration wrote a brief to a federal court saying that this violates equal protection. It's unconstitutional because it doesn't take into account the disparity in income and resources among people. I was a little like, yay for this, but then I thought, I don't know, maybe Shaka could come up with some reason why this is not.
I'm curious.
Yeah, so let me get your thoughts on this.
I think it's great.
Oh, okay. All right. We're on the same page here.
Wow.
I don't know. For some reason, I was expecting a little bit more of a maybe moderate, like, oh, I don't know. This is, we just got to
Well, no, I think bail should be in accordance with the crime and your
But
ability
is it
to
the
pay.
core? Okay, that's the second part. Is the ability
I
to
think,
pay part?
Yeah, both have to be weighed.
Right. And they should be taken into account, really. If we're talking about whether I should be going to jail, I think a very important question is, do I have a flight? Is there a flight risk?
That's the only
Am I going to be a
question.
danger to society while I'm out there? So if I'm not taking into account that, and I'm just saying, hey, you have to pay this $160 or $500.
Yeah, so we're talking right
not
now
fair.
specifically about a case in which a man, I shouldn't even laugh at this, but I am because I know I've done this, it was, I guess, arrested for being a pedestrian under the influence. And not a Ryan Lochte style pedestrian under the influence, like just, respectable, well put together, held together pedestrian under the influence. But this man was caught, and he has limited resources and mental health issues, and he couldn't pay a $160 bail, so he was in jail for nearly a week until some organization bailed him out and then filed this suit on behalf of him and similarly situated people. When you look at it in that sense, like, we kept a man in jail, we taxpayers had to pay how much money to keep him in jail for a week, and like it could have been longer, it could be months before. Probably wouldn't have been months before he saw a judge, but sometimes these people.
It can be that long. I mean, or maybe not months, but Human Rights Watch did a report called The Price of Freedom, where they looked at certain crimes in 2008 in New York City, and it said that of those who had been in custody for non-felonies, non-violent offenses, nothing with weapons, that 87 and bail was set at less than $1,000. 87% of those individuals couldn't meet bail, and therefore they were in jail on average for 16 days for, again, non-violent offenses that were not felonies, these were just misdemeanors. And who knows, maybe they were innocent, maybe they weren't, but that was 16 days just because they couldn't pay.
And that's a big problem, because that's a part of the population that may have transient work. So that the job, if you don't show up the next day, you're fired. So all of a sudden you've lost your job.
Yeah.
And so it does impact even further than that.
I appreciate that you threw in the detail about them not being necessarily guilty, because I have seen some articles and comments that are like, well, if you can't afford to pay bail, then don't break the law. And those people are missing the part about these people have not been convicted of anything at this point.
And what's worse is I worked in an early representation unit for the public defender in Miami. And so we had a lot of people that were taking guilty pleas just to be able to get out and go home. So we wanted to make sure bail was set fairly and that they had due process rights, essentially, because a lot of times they were being offered, hey, look, you plead guilty to this crime, you get to go home, we know you got to be at work tomorrow, you know you have a family, and they plead guilty, and then the second or third time, now they have a history, a record.
And that's really important, that power dynamic shifts when you're in jail. You haven't been convicted, you haven't gone to trial, but you're in jail. The prosecutor's offering you something that's just, and you're kind of desperate. I just want to get out of here. I don't belong here. I have to go to work. I have my family to support. You're more likely to take some sort of plea that might be completely different than what you would have negotiated if you were not in jail.
And then your bail's going to be a certain amount, next time. So
this is really interesting, because this is, very possibly could go all the way up to the Supreme Court. A lower court came up with a decision that was basically in line with the DOJ's brief. And so I guess we'll just have to see as it makes its way through the courts. Very interesting. All right, and finally, a story that is really sad, but that will have you asking the question, is it fair that these parents have to reimburse the defendants in this case, in a case that involves the death of their own son, and these defendants were people that the parents thought were responsible for the death of their son? Okay, I kind of laid that out. I tried to lay it out simply, but I may have made it more confusing than the actual story. So why don't I just start with the actual facts of the case? So this was a case about 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson. He was on the high school football team in Georgia. When he was found, dead, rolled up in a gym mat that was propped up. He was found sort of the next day with his feet up in the air. And investigators say that he had like dove in to get tennis shoes out of the mat, and he got stuck upside down and basically asphyxiated. He suffocated to death upside down because he, I guess, couldn't get out. But the parents thought this does not seem right, and they actually had his body exhumed. They had it re-autopsied, and that autopsy found that he died from a blow to the neck. And so then the parents filed a $100 million civil suit against the defendants, 39 of them for either being involved or covering it up. The parents had this theory that it was a kid who was also on the football team who had a grudge against their son because of a fight from a few years earlier, and that teammate had recruited his brother to help them, kill Kendrick, and everybody else, city officials, school officials, all got pulled up into this ginormous lawsuit. And then in March, the case was dropped. And now the defendants are like, we want to get paid back. They are asking a judge for $850,000 collectively to be reimbursed for their attorney's fees. And a judge will make a decision on Monday about whether some or all of those fees will need to be sort of repaid by the parents who have lost their son. Please tell me your thoughts on this.
I was really surprised by this, actually. I mean, this this type of a judgment really disincentivizes people from filing lawsuits in the first place, because I'm afraid if I lose, if I don't have enough evidence, that I'm now going to be responsible for the attorney's fees for the other side, even if I do have a claim that might be reasonable. I mean, the circumstances of her son's death were very, very unusual. As you mentioned, there was the second autopsy where the coroner is saying that the death resulted from a blow to the neck. I think there was blood found there. I mean, there are a number of things that I think can raise a valid question. And I can understand awarding attorney's fees where someone files a completely frivolous lawsuit that has no basis and just no justiciable kind of question of law or fact that, that could be accepted by a court. I think it makes sense in that case. But I think when you have the death of somebody under suspicious circumstances and, a coroner's report to maybe support that, I think that's unfortunate that then a family or a plaintiff might then have to be responsible for attorney's fees in that circumstance.
And I agree with Yemi, but that said, there were 39 defendants. So if anyone was pulled in that may have felt their involvement was frivolous, then that might be something to look at. Because maybe they decided to over-include everyone because they wanted to make, maybe out of rage or upsetness with different people on the team. But so unless it's that kind of very unique circumstance, I don't think this is the kind of case you want going forward.
Yeah, man, this one's really tough because even though that autopsy showed a blow to the neck and it looked like something suspicious was here, there wasn't anything, as I understand, directly tying those kids to having done it in that corner. An autopsy can only say how somebody died, not who did it. So, but I feel so terrible for these parents. I mean, I would hope that if something happened to me and it was a crazy explanation, that my parents might look into it and see if that was really the case. So I don't blame them for investigating further and then wanting justice for their son.
It's just suing people that may not have had any connection to it.
There were videotapes in the school that there was question as to certain parts of the tape were missing. I think maybe there were 26 hours of tape and 2 hours were missing from one tape, an hour and a half was missing from another tape. So there was a question also, was it the school playing with the videos, the police department?
Yeah.
See, I think you could certainly go after those characters because that's more rational in terms of the supervisor, the coach, or people that were in a position of power. But bringing in other people then...
And a criminal case hasn't really gone anywhere.
Yeah.
So I would understand that they would be frustrated and then go civilly, because at first I thought, well, why didn't they just allow the criminal investigation to go forward? But by the time that they re-autopsied the son, it was 2 years later. Yeah. And so a lot of evidence is gone and difficult for law enforcement to investigate properly. So really bizarre story that raises a really interesting legal question. All right, that is it for us for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, like, comment. You can find me at Chelsea Galicia on Twitter and Instagram.
You can find me at Shaka Strong on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat.
And you can,
oh yeah, I forgot about
and you
that
can
one.
find me at Yemi on Twitter and Instagram.
All right, bye everyone. See you next
guys.
week.
From executives Keven Undergaro, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, and the entire BHL staff, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us. info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I am the official voice of Black Hollywood Live, Scipio. Instagram me at KingXOBay. Thanks for tuning in.
Hollywood,
redefined.
The views expressed here are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.